What happens when the man who signs your paycheck straps on a hard hat and hauls concrete next to you? It was supposed to be a quick site check. Just a visit to one of the 8 job sites his family's construction company had running across the state. But Pierce Ellison, the CEO, hadn't liked the tone in the last few weekly reports. Project timelines were slipping, injuries were up, and employee turnover had quietly doubled in the past 3 months. Nobody could give him a straight answer why. Pierce had inherited the company from his father 6 years ago. He'd grown it too fast, maybe. The sites were spread thin, and he hadn't met most of the crew leads personally. He barely knew the foreman anymore. What used to be a tight-knit crew was now a 100-person operation across 8 locations. So he made a decision. He shaved his beard, dyed his hair a dusty brown, and put on a pair of scratched-up work boots he hadn't worn in over a year. With a fake resume and a new name, Paul, he joined Site 4 as a new trainee through a third-party temp agency. No one questioned it. It was a big site, and no one there had met him before. It was easy to disappear in the dust and noise. Day 1 started at 6 a.m. sharp. It was already hot, and the site buzzed with the clang of rebar and the low hum of diesel engines. New guy. A tall man in a reflective vest called out. "You're with me. Let's go, we're already behind." That was Wes, the foreman. Mid-40s, lean, fast-talking, and always squinting like the sun was a personal insult. Pierce nodded, falling in line behind him. "Yes, sir." "Don't call me sir," Wes muttered. "Just keep up." The first day was backbreaking. Hauling buckets of gravel, tying rebar, stacking boards. Pierce kept his head down and listened. He watched how Wes barked orders, how guys flinched when he walked by. No one dared complain. By the first break, his shirt was soaked through. The crew gathered near the fence under the only shade. Someone cracked open a cooler. Pierce reached for his water bottle. Wes blew his whistle. "Break's over. Let's go, we're behind." A young guy named Mateo blinked. "Wes, it's only been 5 minutes," I said. "Move." Wes's voice dropped. "You want to finish this slab tonight or come back on Saturday?" There was a pause. Then everyone stood up, silent. Pierce's gut twisted. 5 minutes? On a 90-degree day? He kept his mouth shut. Not yet. He needed to see more. Over the next 3 days, the same thing kept happening. Breaks cut short. Water rations watched like gold. One guy twisted his ankle on day 2, and Wes forced him to keep working. "You limp fine," Wes had said. "Ain't broke, is it?" Pierce saw the looks. Exhaustion in every face. But no one said anything. They needed the paychecks. On the 4th day, something snapped. It was noon. The sun was brutal. One of the older workers, a man named Darnell, sat down on a crate, red-faced and breathing hard. 5 minutes, Darnell said, wiping his face. "Just 5. Get up." Wes shouted from across the site. "You don't get paid to sit."
"I'm dizzy, man," Darnell muttered.
"You pass out, you're off the site. You hear me?" Pierce dropped the board he was carrying. "Enough." Wes turned. "What?" I said enough. Pierce pulled off his hard hat. His voice was calm, but firm. "You don't talk to him like that." "Oh yeah." Wes walked over, eyes narrowing. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Pierce took off his gloves. "I built this company. My name's Pierce Ellison." Silence. Complete silence. Someone dropped a wrench. Pierce looked around. "I own this site. And I've been working next to these guys for 4 days. Watching you treat them like machines." Wes took a step back, face pale. This a joke? I wish it was." Pierce turned to Darnell. "You okay?" Darnell nodded, stunned. "I just need a minute, boss." "You'll get it." Then Pierce looked at the crew. "Everyone take a real break. 30 minutes. Water.
Shade. Now."
No one moved at first, unsure if it was real. Then, one by one, they walked toward the fence. Pierce turned back to Wes. Office.
Now.
The makeshift break area was quiet. Most of the crew sat on overturned buckets or scrap lumber, sipping water, heads low. No one said much. The only sound was the distant clatter of a concrete mixer and the occasional creak of a crane overhead. Wes stood frozen near the edge of the site trailer, hands twitching at his sides. His eyes darted from man to man, then back to Pierce. Pierce didn't look at him. He stepped into the trailer first. "Close the door," he said, voice steady. Wes followed, slower than usual, the heavy steel door clicking shut behind him. The small office inside was cluttered blueprints pinned to corkboards, empty coffee cups littered across the counter, and a fan squeaking in the corner. A laptop sat open on an old desk, spreadsheets still on screen. Pierce didn't sit. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "You ever think about why people quit here, Wes?" Wes ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I didn't know who you were. That's not what I asked." Wes hesitated. "People don't want to work hard anymore. They come in soft. They want air conditioning and catered lunches. This is construction. It's not supposed to be easy." Pierce nodded slowly. "You think telling a man he can't rest when he's lightheaded is hard work? Cutting water breaks in 90-degree heat? That's leadership to you?" Wes's jaw set. "I kept this site on schedule. We're under budget. We haven't missed a slab pour in 3 months."
Pierce took a step forward.
"And how many injuries in that same time? How many guys left without saying a word? I don't run a daycare. They know what they signed up for." "That's where you're wrong," Pierce said, his voice flat. "They signed up to build something. They didn't sign up to be treated like disposable parts." Wes looked away. "You think you can run this site better than me?" "I don't have to," Pierce replied. "Because you're done.
Right now.
Clean out your locker." Wes blinked. "You're firing me? Just like that? You've created a culture of fear, exhaustion, and silence. You used my company's name to justify abuse. So yes, just like that." Wes didn't argue again. He didn't apologize either. He grabbed his thermos off the shelf, muttered something under his breath, and walked out. Pierce waited until he was gone before stepping outside. The crew turned to look uncertain. "Wes is no longer with the company," he said. "I'll be overseeing this site directly until we find a new foreman." No one spoke. A few exchanged glances. Mateo, who had been quiet the whole week, finally stepped forward. "Are we still pouring slab tonight?" His voice was cautious. Pierce nodded. "We are. But no one's skipping meals or water to do it. We'll get it done right, not fast." A few heads nodded. Pierce turned to Darnell. "You're not lifting another thing today. I'll get someone to drive you home." "I can stay," Darnell said quickly. "I just needed a minute earlier, and you're taking the rest of the day. That's not up for debate." A younger woman with a bandana tied behind her neck stepped forward. "We're short 2 guys already. If he leaves, and Wes is gone, who's running the pour?" "I'll run it," Pierce said. "I've done it before." "You serious?" she asked. "I'm not here for show. What's your name?"
Leah.
"I handle material tracking and safety logs. Then you're going to help me with the schedule. We'll adjust based on what the crew can handle safely. Deal?" Leah gave a small nod. "All right." The rest of the day moved differently. Pierce assigned himself to the mixer, working alongside 2 men who hadn't said a word to him all week. He didn't try to win them over. He just worked. Fast, precise, and without complaint. When the mixer jammed, he was under it with a wrench. When they needed more mesh cut, he grabbed the snips without being told. By late afternoon, something shifted. The crew wasn't smiling, but the edge was gone. Men and women spoke a little louder. Jokes returned in small doses. No one looked over their shoulder every time they slowed down to wipe their face. That night, they finished the pour. Not on time, but it was clean, even, and passed every measurement check. Pierce stayed through the cleanup. He helped coil hoses and stack the unused rebar. When the last truck left, he locked the gate himself. The next morning, he arrived before dawn. Not as Paul, as himself. This time, no one avoided him. After morning check-in, he called Leah into the trailer. "We need a new foreman," he said. "You've got experience with logistics, safety, and crew coordination." Interested? Leah's eyes widened. "Me? You've got the trust of the crew. You've been running half the site without a title." "I noticed." She hesitated. "I've never officially supervised before." "You've already done the work. You just didn't have permission." She looked down, then up.
All right.
"I'll do it. You'll have support. I'll be on site the rest of the week. And I'll push HR to fast-track your training." "Fair. Fair." He stood and extended a hand. She shook it, firm. Later that day, Pierce walked the perimeter with Mateo. The kid was quiet but sharp. He pointed out a drainage issue near the northeast corner and suggested rerouting the runoff. Pierce listened, nodded, and told him to draft a proposal. That night, he called the regional manager. "We've got bigger problems than just one bad foreman," he said. "I want site audits across all 8 locations. Quiet ones. No heads up. I want to know what's really happening." "What triggered this?" "I worked 4 days on site for. I've seen enough to know we've drifted too far from where we started." "You want me to notify the other foremen?"
No.
"I want their real behavior, not their best version." Pierce hung up and sat in his truck, engine off. Outside, the site was still. The crew had gone home, but their work remained fresh concrete, neat lines, no trash left behind. He tapped the steering wheel once. Tomorrow, he'd be at site 2. This time, he wouldn't need a disguise. Pierce parked across from site 2, just after 5. The sky was still dark, the air cooler than it had been down south, but the gravel lot already had a few pickups scattered across it. He stayed in the cab for a moment, watching. This site was supposed to be in better shape, at least on paper. Fewer injuries, better output, and higher crew retention. But that's exactly why he picked it next. He wasn't looking for chaos. He wanted to know what smooth actually looked like when no one knew the owner was watching. He stepped out and crossed the lot, boots crunching underfoot. No one recognized him, but a few workers nodded as he passed. He nodded back, keeping his pace casual. The site trailer door was propped open with a cinder block. Inside, a stocky man leaned over a folding table, flipping through a binder. Safety vests hung on hooks along the wall. A portable radio played low country music from the corner. "You Ellison?" the man called without looking up. "Yeah. Didn't expect you this early. I'm Ray, site manager." Pierce stepped in and offered his hand. Ray shook it without hesitation. "Appreciate the time," Pierce said. "You mind if I walk the site a bit before the crew rolls in?" "Not at all. There's fresh coffee. Watch your step near the West Trench, we're still shoring it." Pierce nodded, grabbed a vest off the hook, and stepped out. The frames on the southern end were already up 3 floors high, wood still pale and clean. A few temporary lights buzzed faintly along the scaffolding. He walked slow, noting the tool placement, the neat rows of materials, even the absence of scattered debris. It was tidy, almost overly so. By 6:30, the lot was full. Crew members filed in steadily, exchanging short greetings and pulling gear from their trucks. A tall woman with a clipboard gathered them near the front slab. "All right, listen up," she said, voice sharp but not hostile. "We're behind on the stairwells. I want everyone clear on that. We've got rebar delivery at 9, inspection at 1. Anyone not on a frame duty, you're with me rechecking the West Trench forms. Let's keep it tight." She turned and scribbled something, then looked up again. "And no shortcuts on PPE. Hard hats, gloves, eyewear. I don't care if it's hot." Pierce watched from the edge, arms crossed. The workers didn't grumble. No one dragged their feet. They just moved a few with tired eyes, but none with that hollow, checked-out look he'd seen on site for. Still, something in her tone felt clipped. Not aggressive, but guarded. He waited until the crew dispersed before approaching. "You run the crew briefings?" She looked up.
Yeah, I'm Carmen.
"Lead for structural." "You're Ellison." Word travels fast.
We got the email last night. Said you were walking sites.
"Didn't say why." Pierce nodded. "Didn't ask for reception. Just wanted to see the work." Carmen narrowed her eyes slightly. "We don't stage anything here, if that's what you're wondering." "I'm not wondering. You've got the cleanest site I've seen in weeks. We run it tight because we have to." She folded her clipboard under one arm. "But it's not perfect. Tell me." Carmen glanced over her shoulder, then back. "The work gets done. We don't lose guys often. But they're tired. A few of them are doing two-man jobs alone." "Why?" "Because we can't get more people cleared. Background checks are taking too long. HR's backed up. And some of the new hires don't last more than a week. They come in, see the pace, and walk." Pierce looked across the yard, where 3 men were lifting a steel beam into place with a chain hoist. One of them paused to adjust his gloves, then returned to the grip, without missing rhythm. "How long have you been lead?" "For months. And before that, framing. I was on the crew. Then the last lead quit, and Ray put me up." "You want the job?" "I'm still deciding." Pierce raised an eyebrow. "What's holding you back?"
She paused.
"It's not the work. It's the margin. Some days it feels like we're always one skipped lunch away from a safety issue." "Have you logged those concerns?"
Twice.
No response.
Pierce took a breath.
Noted. He stepped away and walked the perimeter. As he passed the west trench, he spotted a shorter man kneeling beside the rebar grid, adjusting ties with practiced hands. His hoodie was soaked through, but his motions were steady. Pierce crouched nearby. "You running point on this?" The man looked up, startled.
Yeah.
"You need something?" "Just watching." "That's clean work." "Thanks. Been tying bars since I was 16. You local?" "Used to be. I drive in now." Pierce nodded slowly. "You working solo today?" The man hesitated. "Supposed to have a helper." He called out. "You tell anyone?" "I told Carmen. She said she'd send someone if they freed up." Pierce looked around. The trench was deep, close to 8 feet. A lone worker down there wasn't just inefficient. It was risky. "All right. You stay put. I'll get someone on it." He stood, walked back across the yard, and pulled Ray aside near the trailer. "There's a guy alone in the trench. That's not acceptable." Ray rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, I know. We're stretched thin. I was going to pull someone off the compressor crew." "When?" "Soon as they finish the anchor plates." Pierce's voice dropped. "You're gambling. One slip, and he's pinned under steel. That's not a delay. That's a funeral." Ray looked away. "You're right. I want a full manpower log today. What roles are doubled, where we've got solo coverage? I want to buy 4. Ray nodded. "You got it." Pierce didn't stop moving. All day, he rotated between crews scaffolding, concrete, formwork. No one slacked, but the tempo was relentless. 2 men were patching a stairwell landing with barely enough room to move, their knees grinding against raw timber. A woman on the 3rd floor was hauling buckets of nails herself because the hoist operator had been reassigned. The work was precise, organized, but there was no buffer.
No flex.
Late afternoon, Pierce called Carmen and Ray into the trailer. "We need to talk about capacity," he said. "You're running a high-functioning crew at a pace that isn't sustainable." Ray leaned against the wall. "We've been meeting targets." "At what cost?" "You've got solo workers in unsafe zones. You've got your lead pulling double duty on safety and logistics. That's not lean, that's brittle." Carmen crossed her arms. What do you want us to do? We don't get to pick when HR hires. We don't get overtime approved unless it's an emergency.
Pierce looked at both of them.
You do now. Ray blinked. What? You're authorized to approve overtime for safety coverage. Effective immediately. You need a second person in any red zone, you get them. You need a float for material hauls, you get them. Carmen's expression didn't change. And if payroll pushes back? They'll hear from me. Pierce turned to Ray. You're also going to get a dedicated safety officer assigned within the week. No more doubling up. Ray nodded slowly. That'd make a difference. Pierce looked at Carmen. You've been leading from the front. I've watched it. But you shouldn't be forced to balance logistics and crew health. You interested in stepping into a full site supervisor role? She stared at him. That's Ray's job. Ray's moving to regional oversight. Too many sites need attention. This one needs someone grounded here. Ray didn't object. Honestly, I'm ready to step out of the field. She's earned it. Carmen hesitated. I'll take it, but I want input on scheduling. Real input. You'll have it.
Pierce stood.
I'll be back next week.
We'll walk it again then.
Until that point, run it how you know it should be run. Not how the paperwork says it has to be. They didn't thank him. They didn't need to. They just nodded and went back to it. Pierce stepped outside into the fading light. The crew was wrapping up, coil hoses being reeled, ladders coming down. No one looked overworked tonight, just tired in the way people should be after a day of real effort. He walked the length of the site one last time, then turned toward the lot. Tomorrow he'd drive north Site 6. And if the numbers there were to be believed, the real test was still coming. Pierce pulled into the gravel lot at Site 6 just after 6:30 in the morning. The drive up had been quiet 2 hours of winding rural highways and thoughts that wouldn't sit still. In his gut, this site had been the one nagging at him the longest. It wasn't the worst on paper, but it was the only site where crew surveys had stopped coming in altogether. That silence told him more than any report could. He stepped out and scanned the lot. Fewer vehicles than expected. No movement yet. The gate was open, but the site trailer was dark. He checked his watch. Start time was supposed to be 7. He walked the perimeter alone. No radios. No early prep. Just a half-finished foundation, scattered pallets of unwrapped drywall, and a loader parked with the keys still in the ignition. By the time a white SUV pulled in at 7:15, he'd already made 2 full laps. A man in a crisp collared shirt stepped out, adjusting his belt as he walked. You must be Mr. Ellison, he said, extending a hand without meeting Pierce's eyes.
I'm Grant.
Site foreman. Pierce shook it, firm. You're late. I oversee 3 sites. Mornings can get stacked.
Pierce didn't respond.
He turned toward the trailer and opened the door himself. Inside, the air was stale. The whiteboard schedule hadn't been updated in over a week. A stack of unfiled inspection sheets leaned against a broken printer. A microwave blinked 12. How many crew on today? Pierce asked, looking over his shoulder.
8.
Should have been 12, but we had 3 no-shows and 1 call-off. Pierce paused. And you didn't call in replacements? We don't have spares. Everyone's booked. We're short-handed all week. Pierce stepped outside and watched 2 workers walking in from the far end of the lot. One limped slightly. The other had no hard hat. You running safety checks? Of course, Grant said quickly. We just haven't gotten to morning brief yet. You've had 20 minutes. Grant opened his mouth, then closed it. Pierce walked past him and headed for the slab. The workers had started dragging materials into place, but there was no coordination. One was trying to move a 30-foot beam alone. Another was sifting through a pile of splintered form boards.
No supervisión.
No direction. No plan. A woman in a faded hoodie was climbing onto the scaffolding with a brad nailer slung over her shoulder.
No harness. No spate.
Hey. Pierce called, stepping toward her. Get down.
Now.
She glanced down, startled.
Why?
I do this every day. You fall from there, you don't get a second shot. I'm behind. No one else will finish this if I don't. Pierce turned to Grant, who had finally caught up. She's working unsecured at height. That's a direct violation. Grant shrugged. She's one of our best. She knows what she's doing. Doesn't matter, Pierce said. You know the policy. And you've ignored it. Grant's tone hardened. Look, we get creative where we need to. We're not a union site. Pierce stepped in closer. You think policy is optional? No, I think you've been away from the field too long. Guys cut corners. That's how the work gets done when you don't have ideal conditions. Pierce stared at him. You're done. Give me your keys. Grant blinked. You're firing me? You're not supervising. You're endangering people. You've normalized shortcuts, ignored staffing gaps, and let safety rot. You don't get another hour here. Grant's face turned red. You don't have anyone to replace me. I'll cover it myself until I do. Now hand over your badge and keys.
He did slowly.
Then he walked off without a word. Pierce turned back to the worker on the scaffold. Come down. You're not in trouble. But you're not going back up there without gear. She nodded and climbed down, slower this time. Pierce gathered the remaining crew near the trailer. They stood in a loose half-circle, eyes wary, hands in pockets. I know today didn't start right, he said. But I'm here now. We're going to get this site back on track. No one spoke. He continued. We'll run a short day. Focus on high-priority tasks, and no one work solo. If a task needs 2 people and you're alone, you stop. Understood. There were a few nods. One man raised his hand halfway. What about lunch? You'll get it. Full 30. No exceptions. The rest of the morning was tria. Pierce assigned himself to the scaffold crew, working with the same woman who'd been climbing earlier. Her name was Brenna. She didn't talk much, but her hands were fast and careful once she was properly outfitted. He watched her align framing brackets with a speed that told him she wasn't new, just unsupported. By midday, a rhythm started to form. The crew moved slower than other sites he'd seen, but more deliberately. A young guy named Curtis had a knack for spotting material defects and started pulling warped boards without being told. Another worker, Anna, began reorganizing the tool station, muttering under her breath about how no one ever put anything back where it belonged. Pierce didn't correct her. He handed her a new lockbox and told her to set it up however she wanted. After the lunch break, which everyone actually took, he sat down with Curtis and Brenna on the edge of the slab. How long has it been like this? He asked. Curtis glanced at Brenna, then back. What you saw today. That's normal. No direction? No support. Grant only showed up when he wanted to yell. We'd go whole days without seeing him. Pierce looked at Brenna. She cracked her knuckles, then finally spoke. 3 people have quit in the last month. Not because of the work. Because of how it felt to come here every day. Pierce nodded. That's going to change. But I need help making it stick. Curtis straightened up. You looking for a new lead? I'm looking for people who care, Pierce said. I don't care about titles. I care about culture. Who sets it when I'm not here? Curtis looked down. I don't know if I'm that guy. You don't have to be today. Just start by showing the others this place won't run like it did yesterday. He stood and walked toward the trailer. Halfway there, he stopped and called HQ. I need a float pool started, he said. Dedicated backups. People we can move between sites when we're short-handed. That'll take time to build. Came the voice on the other end. Start it. And bump Site 6 to priority for recruiting. I want 10 candidates screened by Friday. He hung up and stepped into the trailer. The whiteboard was still blank. He picked up a dry erase marker and started listing tasks for the next 3 days. Nothing ambitious. Just realistic goals, clearly assigned. That evening, The crew left slower than they arrived. No one rushed. A few even lingered, checking the new list on the whiteboard before heading to their cars. Curtis passed him near the gate. "You sticking around tomorrow?" "I'll be here all week." Curtis nodded once, then walked off. Pierce stayed behind, cleaning up the tool station with Anna. Neither of them said much, but it didn't matter. The quiet wasn't uneasy anymore. It was focused. By the end of the week, the site was running better. Still short-staffed, still behind, but no longer directionless. Brenna had taken over scaffold planning. Curtis started leading morning stretch and safety checks. Anna managed inventory, like it was a personal mission. Pierce didn't need to say much. He just showed up.
Worked.
Listened. Backed up his words. On Friday afternoon, he called all 8 site supervisors onto a video call. Some were new. Some were still learning. But all had been on the ground in the last 2 weeks. "I went undercover because the reports weren't telling me the truth," he told them. "I saw how far we drifted from the kind of company my father built, the one built on pride, not fear." He paused, let the silence settle. Effective immediately, we're implementing 3 changes. First, every site gets a safety floater. Second, Foreman will be evaluated not just on production, but on crew retention and satisfaction. And third, every single person, from apprentice to site lead, will have an anonymous channel to report concerns directly to my desk. Not HR me. He looked at them one by one. "If you don't lead with respect, you won't lead here at all." No one argued. The following Monday, he was back at headquarters. And for the first time in months, he didn't feel buried in spreadsheets. He felt connected. Pierce didn't make a speech. He didn't issue a press release. He just walked the walk site by site, crew by crew. And slowly, the company started to feel like it used to. Only stronger. Because this time, the foundation wasn't just concrete. It was trust. And he was going to protect it with everything he had.